Los Angeles police learned that a major cross-burning was planned for the city. But this one would be different. Leaders from a confederation of hate groups from across the country would join forces.
These white supremacist groups, the KKK, the American Nazi Party, the Aryan Brotherhood, were trying to create a federation. And they were using these cross-burnings as an organizational activity to bring the groups together.
Ira Reiner was the city attorney for Los Angeles and was deeply concerned about the threat of violence which might be triggered by the demonstration.
We looked very carefully at what they were doing and tried to come up with a theory or an approach that would disrupt their organizational activity to bring this to an end, because to have a federation of these like-minded hate groups could create serious problems.
Your Chevy, okay?
On the night of the cross-burning, leaders of the white supremacist organizations gathered at the Los Angeles home of local Ku Klux Klan organizer Frank Silva.
Frank Silva wanted to make the Ku Klux Klan's presence felt in Los Angeles, and it was Frank's plan to get them all united.
Present for the ceremony were Stanley Witek of the American Nazi Party, Tom Metzger of the White Aryan Resistance, and Richard Butler of the Aryan Nations.
After a couple of hours of preparation, we decided to go up and we would light the crosses.
Los Angeles City Attorney Ira Reiner, working with the Los Angeles Police and Sheriff's Department, had officers out in force in anticipation of a conflict.
Say nothing but give your name and where you live. That's it. Now all we're having is a barbecue. That's all we're having is a barbecue. That's it.
We are gathered here in front of the Antichrist. If one drop of Aryan blood is spilled, there will be revenge. Hail victory! Hail victory!
An invocation, and then the crosses were lit.
Hail victory!
As soon as the crosses became fully engulfed in flame, the LAPD moved in.
Fanatical white supremacists went on a nationwide rampage of violent hate crimes.
It started on the West Coast and moved across the country. And the order was plotting murders, robberies, counterfeiting.
In Missouri, 2 state troopers were gunned down by Aryan Nations member David Tate, leaving 1 officer dead. In Denver, controversial talk show host Alan Berg was killed as he left his home.
And that was the way that they had tried to achieve their political goals. That's where you draw the line, when they use violence, intimidation, terrorism to achieve their ends. That's when they've gone too far.
Ira Reiner handed the case to John Phillips, Deputy District Attorney and author of Sign of the Cross.
The trial itself wound up being of 4 individuals, including Tom Metzger, Stanley Witek, and 2 other individuals that were really non-players. It was with an intent that we will prove was to intimidate, to provoke, to incite terror in others.
Phillips' challenge was to show that the defendants had stepped across the boundaries of the First Amendment's right to free speech.
Clearly there were First Amendment protections which theoretically extended to the activity that the Klan was conducting that night. Our strategy was to show that there was a consistent pattern defining the intent of the Klan to incite terror in the neighborhood and to provoke a violent reaction.
Hate is your law, and revenge is your first duty.
A key witness for the prosecution was Peter Lake and his videotape of the events of that night.
The tapes that I had showed the whole event from start to finish, and so the jury was able to see exactly what went on.
The prosecution called Robert Gentry, a resident of the neighborhood and eyewitness to the cross-burning.
Robert Gentry said this had a terrible effect on him and his family. He thought he was living in Los Angeles, not in old Mississippi.
It was not just men from the neighborhood who responded to the fires that they saw, the flaming crosses. There were also women and there were children. Children who will be emotionally scarred, quite frankly, and that's the intention of the Klan. There's no doubt about it.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Mr. Metzger to the stand, please.
But there were plenty of surprises as the defense began their case.
What was your role the night of the wedding?
Tom Metzger washed his hands of the other defendants. He didn't claim the same First Amendment grounds that they were claiming. Tom Metzger claimed that he was there solely as a reporter who was going to do a story on what the others were doing.
One more question, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Prosecutor Phillips did not buy Metzger's story.
What was important in proving the case against Mr. Metzger was to follow what his course of conduct had been throughout the state of California over a number of years, going from county to county, organizing cross-burning ceremonies, as they call it, and instigating violence, in some instances very brutal violence.
While Metzger avoided the spotlight on Lake's tape, the prosecution still managed to use it against him.
So this barbecue was really a ruse for the cross-burning, wasn't it? Your ruse.
Yes, if you say so.
It's not if I say so, sir. The one thing on Peter Lake's videotape that was helpful against Tom Metzger was that Tom Metzger's right-hand man came down and addressed the others, and he said, if anybody gets arrested, tell them that we're having a barbecue. And we knew that that was the method of operation coming from Tom Metzger. We had to prove the charges against the Klan. It was really to establish a pattern of terror that they were bringing into various neighborhoods from the Mexican border on up to Sacramento.
A celebration of racial hate. A community stricken by fear. A city looking to head off a violent showdown between demonstrators and citizens. It took the jury 7 long days to carefully weigh the First Amendment's right to free speech against a deliberate act of terrorism.
They did return guilty verdicts on almost all of the counts. And most importantly, they returned guilty verdicts on the unlawful assembly count, which was the count that we looked to establish the legal precedent that we felt was so important. We established a legal right of the police, the prosecutors, and the people to redress that kind of conduct and to stop it.
There will be revenge.
I think you have to teach these lessons. I think they have to be retaught to new generations. But they're there, and these people will always be among us.
We accomplished our objective. These defendants were consumed with their criminal trial for the next several years. That put an absolute end to their organizing activity, and from that day to this, there has never been a single cross-burning in the state of California.
Stanley Witek served 1.5 years in the California State Prison at Chino. Tom Metzger served only part of his 6-month sentence before being granted an early release to take care of his ailing wife.
The defendants in this emotionally charged case spoke of a second American Revolution, one based on hate and intolerance. Thankfully, that particular revolution was stopped before it was allowed to begin.